This hot off the press from the New York Times. Despite numerous investigations into Donald Trump, he and President Biden are still tied among registered voters in our first New York Times CNN poll of the 2024 election cycle. So, of course, they indicted him again for the third time because, well, tell us, John Brennan, former head of the CIA, former boss of Operation Mockingbird.
What I find most horrifying is Donald Trump is the leading Republican candidate for president. And it is clear that...
It's clear that Republicans see through this miscarriage of justice, and many Democrats do as well. They're just not saying anything about it because politics is such a dirty business that they're okay with using any means necessary in order to try to prevent Donald Trump from becoming president again. This from Special Counsel Jack Smith, and all having to do with the 2020 presidential election and January 6th. Count 1, conspiracy to defraud the United States. Count 2, conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding, because they're claiming that he directed the mostly peaceful protest inside the Capitol to stop the counting and the certification of the electoral votes, when actually that was Ray Epps who did that, but of course he's not indicted with anything, and in fact is being defended by the Democrats and the liberal media industrial complex. Count 3, obstruction of and attempt to obstruct an official proceeding. Count 4, conspiracy against rights, which is literally the exact same charge that the Justice Department indicted the meme maker who went by Ricky Vaughn on Twitter, whose real name is Douglas Mackey, 5 years after he posted a meme joking about how Democrats could text in their vote to vote for Hillary in 2016 and skip the line. Seriously, look at this. Count 4, they say it's a violation of 18 USC 241. Here's Douglas Mackey's indictment. That is exactly what he was indicted for posting a meme. Oh, by the way, he was found guilty, and his sentencing is coming up here in a few weeks, and he faces 10 years in prison. But this woman, I believe a self-proclaimed comedian, posted a tweet with a video doing the exact same thing, but saying that Republicans could skip the lines by texting in their vote. But, of course, she wasn't indicted, and she didn't even feel like she needed to delete this tweet to try to cover up the evidence because, well, she's not afraid of getting indicted for a joke. Hey, Trump supporters, she said, skip the poll lines on election 2016 and text in your vote. Text votes are legal, she says, or vote tomorrow on Super Wednesday. This is literally the exact same thing that Douglas Mackey posted. And then 5 years later, as soon as Joe Biden took over the government, I think it was right in the end of January, right after the inauguration, the Justice Department, under direction of Joe Biden, indicted him. What's happening here is described precisely in this legal ethics textbook that law school students study in order to learn how the legal system functions, which says the first major issue of prosecutorial discretion is the decision to investigate. Justice Robert Jackson, who had been Attorney General of the United States, called that the most dangerous power of the prosecutor because it enables the prosecutor to pick people he thinks he should get rather than pick cases that need to be prosecuted. Irving Younger, reflecting on his own experiences as a prosecutor, similarly observed that a prosecutor's power to damage or destroy anyone he chooses to indict is virtually limitless. Bennett Gershman, another former prosecutor who was one of the most thoughtful commentators on prosecutors' ethics, noted that the prosecutor's decision to institute criminal charges is the broadest and least regulated power in American criminal law. When a prosecutor focuses on a person, Jackson said, it is not a question of discovering the commission of a crime and then looking for a man who has committed it. It is a question of picking the man and then searching the law books or putting investigators to work to pin some offense on him. At that point, law enforcement becomes personal, and the real crime becomes that of being unpopular with the predominant or governing group, being attached to the wrong political views, or being personally obnoxious to or in the way of the prosecutor himself. While many Republicans have condemned this obvious prosecutorial misconduct, Mike Pence, who I actually forgot is actually running for president in 2024, although he may not actually even qualify for the debates that are coming up in just a few weeks, in 3 weeks of the first debates. But he is siding with the deep state, saying today's indictment serves as an important reminder anyone who puts himself over the Constitution should never be president of the United States. Well, someone who will never be president of the United States is you. And here's Democrat Congressman Jamie Ratskin, who also sat on the January 6th committee to try to formulate these fake charges against Donald Trump, committing the same supposed crime that Donald Trump has been indicted with by, well, trying to obstruct an official proceeding and trying to stop the counting and certification of the electoral votes back in January of 2017, trying to stop Donald Trump from becoming president and trying to stop the peaceful transfer of power back then.
I have an objection because 10 of the 29 electoral votes cast by Florida were cast by electors not lawfully certified.
I object to the votes from the state of Wisconsin, which should not be legally certified.
Mr. President, I object to the certificate from the state of Georgia on the grounds that the electoral votes were not.
There's no debate.
And I object to a certificate from the state of North Carolina.
It goes on and on. There's a bunch more of them, but they were appealing to then Vice President Joe Biden, trying to convince him to reject certifying the electoral count votes. The same thing that Donald Trump was trying to convince Mike Pence to do and send it back to the state legislatures to have them decide. This is the same strategy that CNN contributor Van Jones, to his credit, who is a broken clock and is right twice a day or every few months, maybe I guess twice a year. And he gave a TED Talk detailing this exact strategy before the 2020 election because he was afraid that if Donald Trump was said to have lost, that he would actually try to do what he did try to do. And Van Jones said that it was perfectly legal.
Instead of conceding, a losing candidate could launch a ferocious fight to grab power anyway, or to hold on to power anyway. In the courts, yes, but also in the state houses, electoral college, even in Congress. They could file, for instance, dozens of lawsuits attempting to block the counting of millions of mail-in ballots, saying they should all be thrown out. They're all fraudulent. Then they could demand that the states refuse to certify the election because of all this alleged fraud or interference from a foreign power, or the loser's party could send a rival slate of electors to the Electoral College or to Congress and say, no, we're the real electors, and create a whole situation with that. Any of this stuff could create such a mess in the Electoral College and the Congress that the whole matter just winds up in front of the House of Representatives for the first time since the 1800s. The final tally in the House is taken not by delegate, but by delegation. In other words, individual Congress people don't get to vote. It's done by states. Now, get your head wrapped around this. In 2020, the majority of Americans live in blue states, but there are more red states. So there's a possibility that the Republicans in the House of Representatives could just anoint their candidate to be president, even without the popular vote or a majority in electoral college. That could happen. Now, some people would call that outcome a perfectly legal, perfectly constitutional coup against the very idea of majority rule in the United States. A perfectly legal, perfectly constitutional, that is possible under our Constitution, and it could happen this year.
Yes, it certainly was possible because the language in the Electoral Count Act was a little vague, and so Van Jones, Donald Trump's lawyer John Eastman, and others interpreted it as being that was a possible, perfectly legal strategy. And so they amended, quietly, the Electoral Count Act so that there would be no supposed confusion, so that nobody would be able to argue that again in the future. So lawyers on the right and on the left, Van Jones is a lawyer, both interpreted the language in the Electoral Count Act as saying that the vice president, Mike Pence at the time, could reject certifying the electoral count votes, send it back to the state legislatures as something that was perfectly legal, but now they're indicting Donald Trump with a supposed crime for using that strategy. That's what the protest at the Capitol on January 6th was all about, as Donald Trump said to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. he hoped that it would create enough attention to convince Mike Pence to reject certification, which obviously he did not. Maybe Martin Sheen and these other D-list actors should be indicted for conspiring to obstruct an official proceeding, for putting out this PSA after Donald Trump beat Hillary Clinton in 2016, but before his electoral votes were certified.
Republican members of the Electoral College, this message is for you. As you know, our founding fathers built the Electoral College to safeguard the American people from the dangers of a demagogue.
Actually, they built the Electoral College so that a small handful of states with massive populations wouldn't have a bigger say in who gets elected president than all of the other smaller states. And what it does is it divides up each state's voice so that each state has an equal say in who is able to represent the United States of America as the president.
And to ensure that the presidency only goes to someone who is to an eminent degree endowed with the requisite qualifications.
An eminent degree.
Look at how sad she is. This is bringing back some great memories. I'm going to have to go and rewatch my old compilation of all the Democrats crying about Hillary's loss.
You have the position,
The authority,
and the opportunity to go down in the books as an American hero
who changed the course of history.
Then there's this incredible compilation put out, I think, by the RNC that is 10 minutes long. I'm only going to play a little bit of it, of Democrats, repeatedly, dozens of them, denying the outcome of the 2016 presidential election. The same kinds of statements that after the 2020 election they claimed undermine our democracy and are dangerous and need to be banned from social media. I'll post this entire compilation over on my locals page if you want to see it. But here's just a sample in case you missed it.
How can you win with Russian interference, though?
That's a real
what I'm
thing.
scared about in 2020.
But rightly.
Because I think he's an illegitimate president that didn't really win. So how do you fight against that in 2020?
You are absolutely right.
He's an illegitimate president in my mind.
Would you be my vice presidential candidate? Folks, look, I absolutely agree.
Trump didn't actually win the election in 2016. He lost the election, and he was put in office because the Russians interfered.
Trump knows he's an illegitimate president.
The president-elect, although legally elected, is not legitimate.
I don't see this president-elect as a legitimate president.
You said you believe that Russia's interference altered the outcome of the election.
I do. We have a president who, if in fact it is proven, has been assisted by the Russians and may in fact not be a legitimate president.
The one thing that Trump is fearful of when it comes to his being president is that finally we will see how illegitimate his victory actually was.
And then there's CNN contributor Michael Fanone, who looks like he just escaped from prison and slid into a CNN studio to give his assessment on the latest trumped-up charge.
I think that, Donald Trump should go to prison for the rest of his life. And I would hope that, he would have a stroke and live forever. That's what I would like to see happen to Donald Trump.
But wow, some really nice folks over there at CNN. Me, on the other hand, I want to see him reelected. And if you do too, order your Dare to Reelect Trump shirt from my online store, markdice.com. And this week, save 20% off any of my designs by using the promo code MAGA at the checkout. So order your Dare to Reelect Trump shirt, your Wanted for President shirt, your Conspiracy Theorists for Right shirt, or any of my awesome designs. All available on a t-shirt, long sleeve, and a hoodie, and a whole bunch of different colors as well. So head on over to markdice.com or click the link in the description below. Enter the promo code MAGA at the checkout to save 20% off this week. And check them out.